Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Tuesday, July the 7th. Reflecting yet again on this practice and Ajahn Sona's Dhamma talk yesterday, the theme that keeps coming up to me as such an immediate and direct way to check in on this experience of dukkha and the, emotional tenor that one wants to be aiming for is that sense of connection and completeness. Sensitive to that feeling of lack and discontent that seems to be the inevitable byproduct of not properly attending to and inhabiting this present moment experience with the right kind of mm, mindfulness and wisdom. And it's interesting just what one can do if that is a theme or a frame of reference or a point of mindfulness that one returns to um, again and again. It's like drifting off a path or driving down the highway, and if one's not really attentive on some level, um, you start drifting in your lane. Uh, and it's not that it requires a great level of focused attention or a kind of rigidity of effort, but it has to be there in awareness. There has to be something that's um, attending in the distance to that centering point, and that senses if we've strayed or moved off that due to inattention. So, and there is no automatic. Um, there is no autopilot. At least not now. At least not yet. Uh, it's a dynamic uh, life skill to be constantly uh, bringing that to mind or holding that in mind in some way through the way that we connect with this present moment and this kind of loving, caring sense of awareness. Uh, and then I built on a foundation of goodness and understanding the ability to right oneself, to resolve dissonance and discontent, and to resolve uh, this sense of contentment and being in harmony with the present moment experience. Returning to that sense of relief. So releasing the dissonance, releasing mm, any sense of misalignment with that, and then reconnecting with the peace, the energy, the light, the joy, that sense of relief of returning to the fullness, and I would even say the perfection of the present moment. Like that's what perfect means. Perfect isn't getting what one wants, and perfect isn't living in the world that one can imagine. A sense of perfection that we rightfully should long for is this sense of uh, connected contentment, uh, that knows the absence of dukkha and dissonance. And developing a taste for that, like in the here and now, like here, like now. Is there any barrier or obstacle to being fundamentally and fully at ease with the present moment experience? And if there is barriers or obstacles, somehow we just can't pull ourselves back to that place, um, then there's work to be done. There's causes and conditions to be developed. So that's the refrain or the chorus or the echo that kind of lingers on in my mind this morning. Give plenty of time for your own reflections and questions today. So let me turn to that now. Good morning, Chair. Jhāna 2. And I'm going to assume here you're talking about the second Jhāna talk rather than the second Jhāna here. I'll keep my eye on the chat window in case you want to correct me. Could you comment on Samādhi / Jhāna being both a skill and right livelihood? It's definitely a skill. I guess it's sometimes people call it supernatural. I think listening to Ajahn talk, he doesn't call it supernatural. He calls it super normal. So it's not our normal conscious waking experience, and I'd say in any deep, clear, profound, or intentional way, it's not something that normal people experience and might live their whole life never having experienced the fullness of what it is we call jhana. So it is a skill. Uh, it's not meant to be an accident. Um, it's not a feature of the self. It doesn't come about through winning the genetic lottery or even merely being a good boy or being a good girl. Um, and yet it's not so foreign from our experience. So, it's like with a pointing out, an encouragement, a modicum of faith and confidence that such states exist and such states are uh, intrinsically good, beautiful, uh, worth developing. Like, think about the Buddha. Like, he practiced for years, and he actually went through the jhanas with one of his earlier teachers, but uh, was informed and misguided both by others and even by his own experience. Because of the ephemeral nature, because jhana itself is still anicca. He attained very deep and high jhanas, but would emerge from those, and because his wisdom faculty was not yet fully developed and perfected, he would see the attachment to the world and dukkha re-arising in his experience. So he knew that he had not yet attained the deathlessness. So um, it took years of practice, apparently, for him to get back to the place where he connects with this experience of like seeing the intrinsic goodness of it, the blamelessness of it, and uh, how necessary it is to prepare the heart uh, with the requisite emotional foundation and clarity to see deeply and be transformed by a lucid understanding of the Four Noble Truths and the three characteristics. So I don't think it has much to do with right livelihood other than this kind of connection of wrong livelihood, um, which is fairly narrowly prescribed in the by the Buddha as forms of livelihood that are questionable, if not explicitly sort of censured by most human societies and communities. So dealing in weapons and slaves and poisons, um, being a butcher, somebody whose very livelihood is bound up with the daily, if not regular, sort of act of uh, taking the life of animals. So there's some refinement added to right livelihood in the instructions for the monastics, and that's maybe the closest place that we can maybe make a skill or see a deeper connection to skill in samadhi. And it has to do with right resort, like where one goes or doesn't go, what one engages in, doesn't engage in, because that has a support. Um, Using the requisites of one's life appropriately. So like using robes not for vanity or beauty or um, as an expression of your personality, but for the utilitarian uh, needs of the body, protecting it from the elements and from uh, mosquitoes and flies, burning and creeping things, um, for a sense of modesty, and using uh, any lodgings that are offered, the daily alms support of food and medicines. So like those are included in the right livelihood for a monastic. To be using those for the appropriate reasons and with a sense of gratitude and a sense of loving kindness for the donors, uh, and using those as necessary supports for a modicum of health and comfort so that one can focus one's energies on deepening their understanding of the teachings and developing the path. Uh, and I guess maybe by extension, serving the Sangha. So, but so those do get lumped in with the notion of right livelihood for a practitioner or a monastic, and that might be where you find the closest kind of connection there. And in addition to sense restraint, so And in the cultivation of samadhi, sense restraint plays a very critical role. It's not a cost-free experience just to attend to all the things that impassion the mind and anger the mind. So we want to be very careful what it is that we attend to, and look after our mind. And that it maybe goes to the amount of attention that we give to certain things, external things. There's a certain cost and reverberation with excessive sense contact, which one can notice when one sits down and then tries to kind of calm the mind and engage in the skill of samadhi. So, but I am very confident that it is a skill that almost anyone can learn if they have the requisite faith that such things can be developed, and faith in the incredible potential that developing these beautiful states of mind have. It does not happen accidentally, though. One really has to apply oneself. So, and it's one needs to develop and seek kind of the appropriate supports, oftentimes, to really get a very full sense for it. It's possible with concerted effort and an increase in skill that one becomes less dependent on environment, time, place, some of these other things. But that only comes with mastery. So, good morning, David. Good to see your face, and glad to hear you're enjoying Ajahn Sona's talks. Perfection of the present moment. This is one of my favorite things to do when I'm doing walking meditation. Let's see if I can establish a sense of perfection in each and every step. And that's a sense of perfection in the heart, not in perfectly walking. Oftentimes just try to imagine myself walking on a beach with not a care in the world, and just like fully being there for each and every step. Like the way I normally walk, I'm a few frames out. I'm usually not right there with it. I'm intent on what's next instead of right there with the perfection of the present moment. That's a nice way to practice that sort of sense, establishing that sense of contentedness and perfection and ease with the present moment, walking meditation. Good morning, Zuri. Regarding Vitakka-Vicāra, is Vichara like when one's mindfulness of the breath becomes continuous, like a stream of water from a faucet, and when joy arises? Do you shift the focus to the joy? So Vichara is the sustaining quality of that pair. So, so it doesn't even necessarily need to be the stream, but it's like the attention is sustained on the breath. So there might be other impediments until the mind sort of settles down and it becomes an effortless stream or absorbed in the object of meditation, fully one and at ease, or whole. Like I like to think of it as the undivided mind, wholehearted attention to the breath. So as vichara sort of develops, um, we move to the place where we're able to give our whole care and whole awareness to the breath. And then it is like a stream. It's like the mind is just not interested in uh, other phenomena or other sense contact kind of going on. There still might be some of that sort of in the periphery of one's consciousness, um, but we're wholly engaged with the experience of the breath, and there's a sense of holding or a steadiness. And as that develops, it becomes more and more like absorption. Like you don't want to go anywhere. Now, the second part of your question here, when joy arises, do you shift the focus to the joy? Um, not not completely. I mean, it's something that one wants to be cognizant of and to nurture, sort of in the experience. But um, if one gives all their attention to the joy, one can easily the meditation can easily kind of fall apart. So there's 5 faculties that we're trying to sort of mature in harmony with each other. So the Vitakka, the Vichara, the initial and sustained attention, and the joy and the happiness, or the piti sukha, and then the oneness of mind, ekaggata. So, and it takes experience to know how much you can give to the joy. Like, it's easy to give too much attention to the joy because it's so pleasurable and energetic and interesting, and we can sort of nurture and enhance and magnify the sense of joy and happiness born of attention to the breath. But sometimes the meditation then falls apart. So uh, one way to sort of guard against that is make sure that the joy is connected with the very experience of the breath. So, good morning, Holly. Is Samadhi the first jhana or the condition for the first jhana? So Samadhi is a more global term, as in Sama Samadhi. So, um, and the term gets used in a couple different ways, especially by um, people like me and Ajahn Sona and other teachers when they're talking about meditation or commenting on it. So sometimes it gets used in more the more macro sense, or um, even slightly in a very kind of loosely commentarial sort of sense. So most, I guess, tightly defined, samadhi is the 4 jhanas. Sama samadhi is the 4 jhanas. So it's not a condition for the first jhana, but the first jhana accomplishes sama samadhi. But sometimes we're talking about samadhi in a broader sort of sense, because one does have a samadhi experience as one nears the first jhana, even like with the suppression, resolution of the obstruction of the hindrances. Uh, one is near samadhi, or having a near samadhi experience. It's not yet fully mature. So, but then also the word gets used in a lot of different ways. So, like in Thailand, it's one of the most common ways to refer to meditation. So your teacher might ask, "How's your samadhi?" Or you might sort of be talking with your friends and say, "Okay, I gotta go. I'm gonna go sit samadhi." Um, so the word's kind of used in that fashion as well. And then also we have this three-part division, a way we analyze different aspects of the path and the teaching: sila, samadhi, uh, and panya. Uh, so, and in that sense, samadhi is representative of everything connected with mental cultivation. So, things like right effort and right mindfulness then are subsumed if we have this kind of three-part model of the different aspects of the teaching and the training. So, good morning, Nadine. Given how you describe Vitakka-Vicāra, would you say that full absorption begins at the second jhana? Mm, I think the first jhana classifies as full absorption. So, but if you're comparing the jhanas, like you can make a case for the second jhana being more full because there isn't this activity, even very subtle activity of Vitakka-Vicāra. So I like to think it more in terms of sort of settling. And so, like, the hindrances have been resolved and abandoned, one settles into and experiences the first jhana. And that's like one level of serenity and clarity. Uh, and then, if the conditions are sufficient, uh, one settles into something that's even more uh, whole, still, serene, lucid, energetic. Uh, and so there's not even kind of a subtle movement of Vitakka-Vicāra. So, if we're talking about it like that, then we can sort of think of that as being even more uh, absorbed because you're more you're more settled. The mind is more settled. So, okay. Batteries ran out on my light here, so I'm gonna have to wind this up for today. Uh, let's see, Lucy. I'm not sure how to phrase this question elegantly, so here it goes. I had a surge of anger, and then I felt the energy compressed fully in my body. The power of it felt immense. How do we face it to dissipate? Um, well, there's a lot of different techniques that one can engage in, Lucy. Um, if it's very intense, sometimes it's very difficult just to replace that anger with a more sort of skillful state of mind. So, one might have to talk oneself down or just reflect on the danger of being the danger and the harm to oneself and potentially how it can spill out into harming others through speech and action. And that can help start to check and dissipate the energy of the anger. But sometimes we have to distract ourselves or just engage in something else so that we're not feeding it. So, and the second part of your question here was like how to use the energy effectively. Well, we won't want to use the energy of anger. We want to resolve it. So, um, the only sense we want to use it is we want to use it as an opportunity to develop our skill of knowing how to sort of resolve um, these afflictive emotions. So, and it can wake us up and reawaken a kind of uh, devotion and heedfulness about caring for our mind, and it exposes that there's still more work to do. So, okay, well, I'm going to leave it at that for today, friends. So, hope everyone has a good day, and we'll see you all tomorrow on the morning coffee time. Bye for now.